there is a need for the engagement, because when you engage with a coach, first of all, you're expecting professional approach to this. And there's an accountability that's two ways. Like, the coach is expected to show up, be ready, have a practice plan, have a game plan, have questions, be ready to move you. And then you are also in the side of, hey, I'm invested in this. So why wouldn't I be ready? Why wouldn't I move the ball, so to speak, between every time that we're together, so that I'm advancing and getting more success? Welcome to the Leveraging Success Podcast. I'm Jeff Gearhart, your host. Every time that we come together here, we are looking to help you work less, make more, and with that margin, live an incredible mission for Christ and serve your family better than you've ever imagined. Rob, you and I have been on that journey, living that life, and I think it's safe to say that that outcome was not what we expected, was it?
No, and it keeps getting better, which is the magical thing.
Yeah. Well, we want to talk about the process of absorbing that kind of information, right? To really leverage your success is to have people that are around you that are going to help you to push you to where you're going. I know what we say often is that you're the average of your 5 closest friends. And so if you really think about something like Dunbar's number, if you Google Dunbar's number, you can see that only a certain amount of people can truly know you, can truly get close enough to understand who you really are on the inside. And the people that you let get that close are going to have an incredible influence on you. In fact, they're going to have an effect on your thinking, on your countenance, your belief, your hope, or lack thereof, and your strategy. And so they're going to be your models, and you're going to be modeling for each other. And it goes the same for any sort of competitive event that we were in. So if we were out playing a game of golf, and I was playing with 10-year-olds, maybe I'd compete because I'm bad at golf. That's not my game. But if you play with people who are above you, that are going to be pulling you forward, the expectation is to strive forward, to reach further, to go for it. And I'll play down to those I spend a lot of time with. So it's really important to consider who is getting time with me, because it's going to affect the way that my outcomes will be. Now, today, what we want to talk to you about is the effect of that through intentional relationship, one that we like to call having a coach. Rob, 20 years ago or so, psychology moved from a work that was studying abnormalities, psychological issues, and it moved into something where it started to say, hey, we could live a stronger life. We could have better leadership. We could be better parents. We could be better professionals, and just have a fuller life if we figured out some of the natural processes that happen in us physiologically, some of the things that we react to, the stories that we're keeping in our mind. And of course, to no one's surprise, the things that the Bible said that Jesus had been encouraging us to do from the beginning, living those things out actually do prove to provide psychological health. But the study of that has led to coaching. And for me, it was around 2002 timeframe where I got my first executive coach. And before that was introduced to me, it wasn't really a concept for me because that was not something that everyone did. So it was a privilege. It was an opportunity. And I thought, okay, great. I'm going to be able to be with this coach who's going to be telling me things that I didn't know. They're going to be pushing me to improve my management skills. But what I came to find out really quickly, because I had a very good first executive coach, was that it was really about my mindset. I mean, sure, there's lots of processes, tricks, forms, things of that nature, ways that you can manage your calendar. But really, at the end of the day, leadership is spiritual. Leadership will reflect what's on the inside. It's going to be the oxygen you're going to be providing for everyone around you. So your mindset is going to have the biggest impact on your outcome. So that was my first experience with a coach, and it's become more and more normal. Rob, what was your first experience of deciding that you wanted a coach, that you had a coach, and tell me a little bit about how that started for you?
Yeah, I love this subject, Jeff. I love the subject of coaching. I think it's a really valuable thing for those that are listening to hear about it, because I think it's kind of not obvious how powerful and how transformative coaching is for a life. The answer to that question for me is that I did not have a formal coach in the executive space for a long time. I had a coach. I would say my most valuable lesson in high school was cross country, where my coach taught me that I could actually go further than my body wanted to go. And that kind of gets to the heart of what you're saying, is that the leadership is an inside job. If you want to change the world, change within first. That information, it was so powerful for me to know that I could actually be in huge pain at mile 2 and still overcome, still go faster despite my feelings. Without coaching, that would have never happened.
Yeah, we need each other. And it's a beautiful example you're giving there from a high school sports perspective, or any sort of group activity where you've got somebody that's leading you and saying, follow me. I believe in you. I think you can do more than you think you can do. I can see it in you. Here's the strategy. Here's the approach. Push yourself. It's going to work out. And I didn't find a lot of that in my life, spiritually speaking, marriage speaking, family. But there was an inner drive in me naturally to suffer for my career, because the outcomes were so clear to me. The reward was definite. And belief for that led to not just a, hey, you need to eat, but wow, I could really accelerate. Wow, I could grow to a great opportunity. So the natural drive of the success of my career was already there. And then to have a coach come alongside of that, it was just an accelerant. But what I've found is that I've really needed and wanted coaching for all of my life. Except for that also means that I need to find someone that I would trust to invest in, because good coaching. And so I'll be the first to say that you're going to think that this is self-serving, because Rob, you and I get to do is coach and consult with leaders of all types all the time. But the fact of the matter is, and I've been around a lot of this, and our good friend Noah Elias will say, hey, people that pay attention. There is a need for the engagement, because when you engage with a coach, first of all, you're expecting professional approach to this. And there's an accountability that's two ways. Like, the coach is expected to show up, be ready, have a practice plan, have a game plan, have questions, be ready to move you. And then you are also in the side of, hey, I'm invested in this. So why wouldn't I be ready? Why wouldn't I move the ball, so to speak, between every time that we're together, so that I'm advancing and getting more success? Rob, I mean, I really mean this genuinely to find out your discoveries. Where did you find that you started to gain the most from being around a coach?
Just to point out what you're saying, is that the relationship is intentional on some aspect of growth. That is coaching. And I think, my first formal coaching was with Bob Shank, in the master's program. And of course, that subject that we aimed that intentional relationship was much more than just career. It did include career, and it blew up my career. It made my career much more successful, earning way more money. But it was aimed at life mastery, and so my marriage improved. My fathering abilities improved. I actually got a grid for what it looked like to be an effective father. There's some measurements on that, and so yeah, it's that's where My experience was, and it's really interesting, Jeff, is I don't think that it matters who the coach is. You were saying it's a spiritual experience. I have coaches that I'm working, or I have clients that I'm working that are in city government, and we're just trying to get the team on the executive team to be cohesive. But inevitably, every time in the individual one-on-one, we get to what is your inner culture?
Yeah.
What's your mindset? How are you showing up? What's the story you're telling yourself? And so it's always going to be helping in that lane to refine who you are. When you think about it, the only thing you can control is how you show up. And so coaching needs to be focused on the thing that you can control so that we can maximize that within.
That's right. I don't want to bury the lead here. Of course, we've been in for quite some time to this discussion, but the point of today is really that everybody needs a coach. Everybody needs one. And I haven't found anyone that aspires to having a incredible life that didn't want to follow someone and get inputs from someone. But the question is, well, who's going to mentor you? Well, I mean, you can get mentored by a boss. You could get mentored by an investor, owner, board member. And that can be a little complicated, right? Because you're both in for the same thing. And so the motivations are somewhat maybe self-serving to some extent. But when you find somebody with which that just says, hey, look, I've got a model, I've got an approach to this. You can look at my life, you can see how I'm running, and you can decide that I'm willing, if you're willing to engage with me, to go forward in a healthy pushing that's going to be holistic. Now, I have to say that I've had business coaches and I've had holistic coaches in several different places, including the one that you mentioned that we love so much, the master's program. But the ability to get someone that's helping with the whole of my life is important, because at the end of the day, I can be working on just my career and be completely out of balance. I can have a life that is so overshadowed by this incredibly big muscle that I've been building in my career, but didn't have these other things be in balance. And by balance, but there's a little bit of a misnomer when I use the word balance. It's not to pretend that everything is equal. No, it's not an equality of, it's a measurement of what's the needful of each of these things in my ecosystem. How many commitments do I have from a family perspective? Well, what are the requirements of to deliver adequately, if not excellently, to those parts that I've got in my life? And that same thing, the career is in there, my finances are in there, my plans for the future are in there, and our God, his expectations of us are in there. And so as I look at the needful and opportunities for each, when we work balance out, it's a turning of the knobs of all the commitments to be faithful to from the inside out. And as I turn those knobs to the adequate to excellent needs that each of those got, then that creates an ecosystem that balances together, not by quantity, but by quality. So if I've got a coach that's holistic, that sees the whole of everything I'm after, that keeps me from being just one-sided, one-dimensional. And how many retired people or people that get to the fourth quarter of their life do we meet, Rob, that are trying to recover from these years in their career? They're trying to make up for lost time with their kids who don't call them anymore, and they're trying to make relevance when they've lost all their relevance, and they have very little to show for it or life in the fourth quarter because so much was built up in their career stages. Rob, as you get to coach guys and help them to see holistically the way to build their life, what are some of the ways with which we should be thinking about having a coach who will help me have a holistic life spiritually, in my soul, in my mind, in my body? What are some of the most important approaches that you think that we as Christ followers need to be able to work from the inside out holistically?
Well, number one, and it's kind of showing up in what you're saying, Jeff, is that we need to be asked the right questions. The power of a coach is there is some content to a coach, because hopefully the coach has some wisdom and some conceptual rubrics on how to move forward. But the right question is so critical. And so we have been asked the right questions. The ultimate question is, what is eternity going to look like? for you.
Ooh, yeah.
And then, everything along the way in terms of that balance piece and making sure that we in God's design and what God designed in us, which we can measure based on our talents and our heart driver, our passion, and the things that the outcomes we desire most. That's part of God's design. A coach is going to ask the right questions to make sure that we get that out of us before the death bell, when it's all over. We get, the sad thing is that so many people will get through life without ever having the song within them sung. We need to get that. And that's why a coach is so important. So I'd say number one, the right questions. And number two, like, I look for a coach that has a coach.
Yes.
If your coach doesn't, your coach needs to believe wholesale, hook, line, and sinker in coaching, which means they have one.
Right.
If they don't have one, then that would be a sign to me that, okay, well, maybe it's not as serious as you take it, because I want my coach to be going through a transformative process as well. If we're working on my inner culture, we better well be working on his or her inner culture, because that's going to have an impact on my return on investment for coaching.
Oh man, that is so good. Rob, I couldn't agree with you more on the need to find a coach that asks good questions. A coach that only has statements is not going to be helpful. And so much of what I need to do is Socratic processing in nature of let's ask each other questions that are going to help us to reflect back. And what you're also saying, that referring to the inner culture, and that is a facet of the fact that there is my inner voice. There's the culture's voice to me, meaning the world and the way that it sees things, its norms. I have an enemy that wants to tell me things that are not true. I have a God that wants to inform me, and I have a flesh that has its needs as well. And so all of those are voices and or input points for me to be dialoguing with as the chief executive inside of realm of a team. And there are parts of that team that are not going to be in my best interest, or at times where it needs to be deprioritized. And the one voice that I need to be listening to all the time, and the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit downloading to me how I should be acting, how I should be thinking of things. That's an inner culture. And Rob, until you said that while we've been on this, I have never thought of it like you talked about. That inner culture is an important sense of what's on the inside. It's going to come on the outside. So if I'm making healthy what's on the inside and listening to the right things and prioritizing the right things, my outcomes are going to be completely different across all of me.
That's exactly right. And it's what's interesting about this conversation when you think of coaching. And I'm sure a lot of our listeners have this. They may not have thought about it, but it's true. Is we kind of started talking about executive coaching in business. There's sports coaching. There's all this different kinds of coaching, and then I think we've seen the rise of life coaching, which is really a result of what we're talking about. That inner culture. How do you do life? Maybe it's also a sign of the absence of fathers in the nation. How do I do life well? And what's striking to me is that if you're a follower of Jesus, wouldn't you want a follower of Jesus coach?
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
like that's the thing you want to succeed at most. You would absolutely need to have a coach in that lane. And a lot of people would say, "Well, I got that covered, Rob. It's Sunday with the pastor." But the challenge with that is that pastor's responsibility is for the whole congregation, and they're going to be thinking in whole conversation, and then gospel of salvation to bring other people in to hear that core message. It's not going to be focused most likely on what is God's design in you, and how do we get that on the table for the pathway that God's called you to do. And so a following Jesus coach, or a coach that has is coaching you for all eternity, for your whole existence, not just the short small time you're going to spend on earth, but
Right.
for whole existence, is going to be a much different question. That
Mm.
coach is going to ask you much different questions and get you positioned for radical success from an eternal mindset, not just from a short-lived lifetime mindset.
hmm You know, whether we're talking about church or any sort of big venue event, I think the most that can be accomplished in a big venue event where there's just too many people and not enough individuals speaking and sharing is that I'm going to get encouraged. I'm going to be reminded, and I might get some more wisdom that I hadn't, or new aspects of wisdom that haven't had before. But the application and the tailor-made pushing that needs to happen at a me and you level only comes into group coaching, with which it's going to be the right size, with which I can have relationship. People can know me, being known and knowing others. That dynamic allows for vulnerability to happen, for openness, for others to say, hey, this is something I see. You don't see it. It's like the back of your neck. We can all see it, but you can't see it. And as we talk about that, we get to push each other, and we're all learning and growing together. I think executive coaching is critical. I think life coaching, in the master's program, when we get to work with people, what we're getting to do is to tell them you were made for more. And I love, Rob, that you're saying this, is that it is whole existence, eternity coaching,
Come on.
not just my short part of this line that goes on forever and ever. It's coaching towards the, what do I want in eternity? What do I want repeated in eternity? What will be the memories, and what will my God, what will Jesus say to me in the end? And will I live a life that will be rewarded? Man, these are big, important questions, and you're going to plan to the horizon that your mindset is thinking. If my mindset, the horizon is just the end of the year, then I'm pushing towards whatever the end of the year goals are. But if I've got something that will last forever and ever and ever, and there will never stop being day and forever, then my thinking is, man, I will say no to a lot of things and be very specific in my yeses today to make sure that forever matters forever.
That's our challenge. I think that's the challenge of our day. That's the challenge for people who say they're followers of Jesus, to get into an internal mindset. Because I don't think even at church we find the pushing into the eternal mindset. Most of the discussions that are happening, the framing of concepts, even in eschatology, which would be the most eternal conversation you perhaps could have at church, it's still about what's happening here on planet Earth, and not calling you to how you live here make a huge difference there. And your existence is way more than a few short years on Earth. We call it 100. It's millions and millions of years. And so having a coach that's going to ask you those questions, like, where do you even find that coach? Where
Well,
do you find that person?
there's a couple of things here. Number one, I think you certainly ask people, will you mentor me, or could I take you to get some coffee, and would you tell me more about your life? I mean, I've done that a lot. I think that people that are hungry to grow and learn from people will start that first step. And I think the more that we do that, the better. But two, the master's program's the best answer that I've ever seen towards that end. So what I can tell you is that in the show notes today, we've got a link to where you can start the process to learn a little bit more about what Rob and I get to do with people. And as you think about coaching and deciding, okay, I'm going to get some help to go to the next level. The next season that's ahead of me is going to be different than the one that I'm in. I want to see beyond career. I want to see beyond children. I want to think of a life that's going to be well done and rewarded in eternity. So this has been a fun conversation. I hope you've enjoyed it. Here at this podcast, Leveraging Success, we're all about taking our successes from our business life and learning from them to accelerate every part of who God made us to be. I'm Jeff Gearhart, and Rob Dayton here with me. So glad that we could be a part of this. We'll look forward to being with you next time. God bless you.